The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody and welcome to our today's webinar, How to Run a Show. I'm Thomas and my co-moderator Janina will help me out. Hi Janina. Today it's about how to run a show. The contents so far are first want to speak a little bit about the layer conception, how a layer should be arranged and things like that. Then the queue sections, what makes sense to have there, like a holding view or something. Effective programming is one topic I want to speak about. And multiple sequences. That's mainly the Pandoras Box and timeline stuff. And then the next big topic is controllers and how to control a show, different inputs there, and finally a little bit about backup. Yeah, that's the contents, and let's directly dive in. So let me share my first screen. There we go. You should now be able to see my Pandora's box. So first, when we start Pandora's box, first things to look at is to make things clean and ready for our programming to use. So first thing is, of course, push your assets or your devices into your device tree, and then they pop up. So if you have everything together there, you can try to clean up things, so whatever you need. So actually what I don't need is, for example, audio tracks on my manager, because I'm not playing sound. Maybe you have to play sound. I recommend to do it from the manager there. Then you have to use these. For now I can remove these, so I have more space here and things are a bit more clean. For all the devices I put into my device tree, I go for a right click on the device, toggle devices and show all, and it will show me all connected layers, and I try to figure out which one I need. And I get rid of those I actually don't need, and I remove them completely, because just hide will not take the performance out of my manager application. So I try to remove as much as I can to make it clean and more performant. And then I try to, first, before I go into the, to think how the show will be arranged, I'll go also for configurations menu and configure some things before I start programming. So this is mainly for, sorry, for tabs I have to go through. This is the resources tab. There I can put some initial values in how or how assets which are moved from the assets into my project tree, what options are on those set directly. So it's always good to look through if everything is set up as you want it. So you can spare a bit of time while dragging things into your project tree there. For example, the playlist initial value. So if you use a playlist, what's the initial value? If you put things into the playlist, what's the font size? We can put in large as possible. For example, which font will I use when I create text inputs, right? So that's this section 4. And the sequence is also interesting, how long I expect my sequence to be, what frame rate do I want to use when I create a new one. The one which is already in there will not be affected. This is just an initial value there. So the defaults is something mostly you want to turn these on. This is only special, so makes not much sense to have it as an initial value, I think. But well, it can be set there. Media, how it's used media, there I like to disable the loop because mostly I like to, when I extend containers, I like to have these containers to stop and hold the last frame and not to loop on every of these loop points there. And I can set a pre-roll as initial value, so when I drop a new container here, it will have this pre-roll time already in there. So I set that when I prepared that to 3 seconds, so everything here should have 3 seconds as a pre-roll already. And the next thing we have to look at is the resources. That's really interesting. So if you have shows with large contents, or especially if you use content splitting and you want to be sure to be very dedicated on where to spread which content, then please turn off the auto spread resources after adding to project. That will inherit the if you drag something into your project tree, that will automatically be spread to all your clients and maybe multi-user places. Yeah, so this is a good thing to look at, however you want to have this working. And the last thing is the unit management. And if you have everything connected correctly and the setup on your clients is correct, or that's for sure also to be checked here. So this is there you can see all your connected clients and the incoming EDID of those. Check them, do the routing correctly, and you're ready to go. Last thing, the unit management. You can set the relation to the generic units here, and every screen which is connected to your system and EDID is valid and recognized by the system. You can choose this factor from this drop-down menu, and it will set this factor to you to your project. If you forgot that and you think of changing it while you're in the middle of your programming, please do not change it. This will mess up all your positioning and things. It will always stay correct if you don't change it after the first piece of programming you did. So yeah, that's about configuration, spread, and resources. And when I set up everything as I wanted to, then I'm good to have my first save. And if you hit save the first time, it will pop up with I did already a save, so I use this one instead, but please do not do so. Just press save. The first time it will ask you where to save everything, and I put my show in the projects folder. So this is in between. This should be Christie in between, but yeah, I'm using a system which was installed before the change to the Christie folder. It will work anyway with both folders though. So, and I just saved it here. So there I put how to run PB, how to run a show, and I press save, and it will automatically create this folder. And this folder then contains the most important project file, the assets tab, talk to that later, and the local cache. These two folders I will speak through later. These are manually added ones. The assets folder, this I recommend to put everything which you get as contents for your project in there. Why am I recommending this? Because it's very comfortable to to access from the manager by using the project assets folder here. This is exactly this folder. That's why it's so handy to use that one. You have direct access and you do not have to go through all these folders like C, Kulux, content, projects, and so on. So then press save, and then you have all these folders and for the show file there. After that point, I recommend to not ever change your main project file to somewhere. So I recommend not to use the save project as at any time. What you can do instead, after setting all this up here, is save a project copy. And also this I did already. And therefore, this was the wrong one, this was a tryout. Therefore, I created a backup folder in my project folder. And in there, I can now save project copies, and I really like to use the date and the time on it, and maybe a naming, not necessarily, but this is, if I want to go back to my config, I can load one of these project files back into my main folder and use it instead of the original one. That's how I like to use my backups. So I have always a backup folder where I save copies to, and these copies I can use instead of my main project file, which will ever stay the same. All right, any questions so far?
There was an interesting one about pre-roll, but I have answered that one for everyone.
Well, thank you, Janina. Then I can keep going on. So the next thing I want to speak about is before you start programming, make your mind about the show. So mostly when you start programming, you should have an idea how the show has to be built. My recommendation is, at least for corporate events, it's mainly always the same flow, let's say that. And I really recommend to have a kind of holding look at the bottom or the top layer. You can choose that. It's a bit different to handle, but whatever you prefer. I recommend to have a holding look. I created that one, so this is just a video file. You can see it in the preview here because this is in the preview, render in the preview. You should also see it at the back there on the client. So this client is actually live in the back there. So this is just a video file. Also can be a larger file over multiple clients, of course, whatever it is, or a still image, preferable. If you have a still image as a holding look or something like that, that's very nice because it uses less performance, of course. So I put that on the first layer. I named the layer, so layer naming is also a very good way to keep your overview over your layers. So I put it there, and I put it to toggle lock to time, so untoggled it. So it's on free run, and it has a playback key there, which is play loop. So this loop will always, whatever I do here on the sequence, wherever I jump, it will not stop playing, and it will not do something odd like going black or something like that. So mostly corporate, at least corporate event, they all mostly have sections of different themes or topics, and after these topics they always come back to this kind of look. It may be a bit different from time to time. Maybe it's a change of color, or maybe the content changes a bit. Can be a bit different, but mostly it's all the same. So it's great to have in between. Let's say this is one of these sections. Have some gap in between so that you're always able to jump in between those sections without interfering the background. So then the next thing then is, of course, to add all the content. So, and to keep your content and the project tree like clean and good usable, you have to be very dedicated how to arrange these things. And it's a good idea to involve the content creator with certain namings or labelings of these contents that he knows, you knows, everybody knows how they should go together and how they are to program. That's very helpful, and keep it clean here. At least you can, whatever you add here, so let's add just another video like the waterfall. This has some kind of name. It's not very useful, that one. So let's name it a better one, like 0 to a full screen video or something like that. This will only affect, by renaming this, will only affect your Pandoras box view. The asset itself, as you can see here, will always stay the same. So where is it? Oh, that's just a folder, not the file itself. But it will not change the file name on the disk, but only the labeling in Pandoras box. Also, if you add it now to the timeline, there will be that label instead of that one. All right. So mostly a show starts with an opening sequence. So I added some kind of opening sequence there. So that's this one here. I just added it there. It has a fade in, fade out, gets full screen. Let's jump to there. Let's look how it is. So if I press play, it will fade in. It's unfortunately, it's not a nice video. It's a bit, oh, just something on screen, right? So it plays and it goes down again. So that's the opening sequence in full screen. However, just quick programming, the opener is done. After that, now comes the first section of, let's say, a speaker. And the scheme of this example is that the moderator will present the next speaker. The speaker will go on stage. There will be a live pip and a title, for example. The titles, that's very useful in Pandoras Box, can be created out of the box. So it's just, I created a folder here and I created a text input there, and you can change some things in the text input editor to change the text, color, size, or something like that. Very useful, and that's how I just made 3 titles: presenter 1, 2, 3, and yeah, so the speaker enters the stage, and the first thing should be the live pip to come up, then the title, then he speaks a bit and presents some kind of video, which should be a video as a pip, for example. So that's what we should program there. And yeah, so I will go now into how to program these if there are no more questions so far.
At the moment, we're good. Thank you, Thomas.
All right, then let's directly dive into that. Sorry, I'm half a bit my nose, sorry. So that's, I prepared that, so I moved that a little bit so we can do it all together. So the first thing which have to come up is the live pip, for example. So let's use, so I created a graphic layer and I named this one live pip, sorry, timeline. So as this device actually has no live live source, I just use a test pattern instead. I hope you can abstract this. I think so, you can. So, and I put that up here, and now I have to hit the screen layout. So the designer wants to have the screen or whatever you have there with a layout, and you have to fit that layout somehow. So just try to get it there. So something like that. Of course, I have to keep the ratio. So let's save these keys and then go for the scale and set it to the same, like 0.86. Do the same for that one. 0.86. So, and now the aspect is back correctly again. So maybe we can shift it a bit up to make it look nice. So this should be the final position for our live pip. And what I do now is let's do the title again. So let's put everything together before we do more programming. Let's put all this together. Next thing is the title. This is presenter 1, and this should go there, for example. Maybe it's a bit too large, isn't it? Let's make it a bit smaller. Go there, go there. And finally there is, that's the title. And this is then video. No, this is not video. This should be video because this is a video layer. This is just a graphic layer, right? So the video, presenter 1, speaker A from part 1. So this should be the video. There we go. Let's already make use of the computer. So I created these keys already there. So all the keys are stored and in there. So let's use that again, because copy and paste is what makes you fast on computers, right? So let's use that again and move it. That was the wrong one. Want to have this one there. So yeah, so that's okay, kind of. Okay, of course you can make it more precise in your show, but for now that should be sufficient. So I save all these position keys on my containers, and now what I do, I think about how do they transition in. Is it maybe just opacity blend, or in our case I want to use a transition in from, sorry, I have to grab them all, a transition from the outside, so an X movement transition. So this is where they should start. Okay, so I move all of them over there, and the transition will be fly in to that position. So I store these keys, and what I do now is open up the scale and position of all these, one after another, and I select all these 4 keys I have to use. It's X position and Y position, and X scale and Y scale. That's the main thing. And I do a right click and create a preset out of it. So with the preset, I did some already. You can name the preset. This is now position, or which one was it? Live. Oh no, it's not the live input, it's the video position. Video position. Let's say 2 because I did those in before. Then you do all that with your layers. So I don't do it another time. I think you got what I want to do. So that's how to use that one. And then I create my transition. So my X position, which should finally be, oh, I should have saved that before, sorry. But this should be somewhere there, right? So let's only put it in there. And of course you can use the curve editor to make it a bit nice looking, and I did that in advance, and I will just show you the result. Let's zoom a bit in here. So let's paste the transition in onto the video layer, paste keys into sequence. So these are my transition in keys, and that's how it looks, right? So it just flies in with a bit shake. And I can use this of my presets. So you do all that with your 3 layers, and you arrange them a bit nice. Let's have a look what I create in advanced. To spare a bit of time here. So get these back. Sorry, I missed the line. And yeah, that's actually what I create. Let's zoom a bit in so that you can see. So that's the position I did in advance, and that's a transition, and I give it a little bit of gap so that these containers can fly in a bit. Oh, what's that? That seems the position not correct. Oh, there's some. No. Sorry. So that's how it looks now. So after the opener, we played the opener back here. So out of the opener, we came back to the holding loop, and I like to keep a little gap there. If I do not have to advance very quickly, I can have gaps here. So, and I wait on that to the next cue, to the next call. If the call is speakers on stage, then I put in the live pip and the title, and the next cue will then be play the video. The video plays when it comes up, and it automatically stops playing and fades out when it's played out. And the last key is get rid of these titles and live pips. So this is as long as everything is timed on this or is on the schedule, you can put it together on the sequence, right? So not if someone wants to call a live pip just instead. Are there any questions so far?
No, that was all perfectly clear.
Thank you. Yeah, another recommendation, I really like to put cues on straight timings. So I can just handle it better. Just I don't like to put cues on that. That's just a behavior of me, maybe, but yeah, I can figure out better that way. So after doing that, let me check my list. This is, let's say, the first section of your show, and it all comes back to the holding look, right? So, and what makes us fast now is working with computers is to have this, or is already a finished part of the whole show. Just copy all of this, and we copy together with the cues. So I hold down the Alt button and I drag a selection box around my containers I want to copy, and I make sure I also hit the limits of these cues. So and then I press Control C, go to another straight timing, which is maybe 1 minute, and I paste it again, and my second part is nearly done. So the only thing I have to change now is to be very, and this is a very quick thing, I just have to change everything to speaker B. So that's the title, speaker B. I don't have to change the live input because it's the same. And I have to change the video for speaker 2. Oh no, this is the video, sorry. This should be the video. Can make out my own things here. And this is the text presenter, the title presenter 2, right? And now I'm done. There comes up presenter 2, and he is speaking about little sea lion animal things or whatever, right?
Cups.
Cups, something. Thanks, Anita. Yeah. So it may happen that your sections are a bit more complicated or something, but in fact, with the copy and paste function, if all, mostly the rule is the same. It differs a bit, so there's a piece more or a piece less of content to play, but with that method, you can be very quick in doing things. Yeah. One recommendation is make your user interface fit to what you actually want to do. So if you did all the programming, maybe you need more space here or whatever, you configure your graphical user interface, you can store that as a view, right? So I can create a view, webinar view 1. Not really creative today, sorry. And the second part, so now this is the programming part, and now you come through the change of content part, and then maybe it's better to have this look, so you can create another view, content replacing or something like that, and make everything fit your needs, right? And then now you can see your contents, and you can better drag and change those. Now this, I have to go there. So now I can drag and change my my things better, right? So it's just convenient to have these directly accessible there. So views can be a very helpful things to fasten up your programming speed. Yeah. And when you do these copy things and or incorporate events or different events, also things keep changing mostly. So you have to drag things around, and maybe you so the worst thing can happen is if lengths are changing, right? So try to avoid changing lengths of video clips, because if you puzzle containers together. So this container ends, and after that, another thing will happen here, like that, for example. If this length changes, it's you have to change everything what comes behind that. So try to avoid that. Leave gaps in between that you don't have to do all your timeline again. So it also may happen that somebody says in this section you have to add another video, and and you don't want to shift everything up and down. There's an option. This is called insert time after current time. So this feature will insert time after the now pointer, and that's very useful. Let's say we have put 1 minute, no, it's 10 seconds, 1 minute more. So I add 1 minute of time here. Everything what's hit by that now pointer will now extend it by 1 minute. So I can bring that very quickly back by pressing it up main media duration, and it's back to its length. And here maybe I have to use those ones and bring something on top here, or however whatever you have to do there. So the insert time function is a really good one, and if you do something wrong, there is always the undo button, right? So you can undo these things. You have to be careful a bit with the undo function. Not everything is covered with the undo function. Never covered are things like active values. Those are not in the undo stack. And some other things like changing the amount of layers or adding layers, or making virtual sites. This is a function which will delete all things on your sequence, and this is definitely not undoable. So there it's good to have a project save to do before that. Speaking about project save, I just want to switch for the Widget Designer and show you a nice feature of the Widget Designer. If you have a valid license for that, that's a license thing you have to, when you want to use the auto save or the script timer button. You always can use a normal custom script timer, custom script button to save the projects in Widget and Pandoras Box. The script timer to do autosave, this is only available with the license though. So first thing I set an interval, how often to save, let's say every 2 seconds or every 2 minutes, or let's say 10 minutes, something like that. And the script then will be, I just put in save, and I have WD save to save my Widget Designer, and I have a PB save. There it is, PB save project. So I just put those two in to save both applications or the projects. And when I start that script timer, it will now save my project files every 10 minutes. That's very handy sometimes. So yeah, don't forget to save, and I recommend only save here or save project copies for different states where you maybe want to go back to. And that's about save. Any questions so far?
Nope, we're good. I answered everything.
Oh, you're so good. Thank you. All right, let's move on. So that's some recommendations. We can talk longer about these things, and of course there are different things on the timeline, how to progress on different applications or tasks, let's say. Let's skip now to controls. There are different possibilities to control your show. First thing I want to show you is the Cues tab. The Cues tab is very handy, so because it shows in which state you are, which state the timeline has, how long it goes to the next queue. So it's always good. That's a good recommendation. I want to put a queue, at least a play queue at the end of a container, for example this one, so you can call, or you can say the show caller how long the video clip will be running still, right? So there you can call that without having this gap somewhere in here, right? So that's a good thing to give feedback to your show caller. Yeah, the Q tab, very handy. You also can use it to label the queues properly, like opener, for example, or first speaker. This should be Q2 is first speaker 1 something, whatever. And there you can directly jump to queues, which is very handy if you are in rehearsals or something. Then you can easily jump through your programming and very quickly access every part of your show and play it back as it's wished by a show caller. All right. Then of course, you can use this sequence control tab to just run your sequence. It's working, but I want to recommand different things. Oh, I forgot something I want to mention. It's not on my list. Why is it not? So what we recommend is not to use the preview while you're in a show. You can use it for different things though. So I just did a text input here. Where did I put it? That personal text. So that's just a reminder, like push button or something. And I can use these things, for example, here when I enter this state of my show, or this part of my show, I can put myself some reminders in here. That's maybe a use of these local layers here, right? All right. What controllers do we have else? We, for example, have these jog shuttle controller and the fader extension. So you can put layers live on here, so you can push layers up and down. You can also put sequences on those faders. You can, for programming, it's very useful to have this jog shuttle to get single frames up and down, or scroll the sequence and things like that. So these are also very useful. And oh, by the way, you can configure those here in the configurations. And where is it? Controller, there it is. There you can just enable those. And they're also usable with Widget Designer, right? Also there, they can be put in and can be used via Widget Designer. This is something I speak you through later when we talk a bit about backup. And yeah, that's my favorite solution to drive a show, though. And that's independent how many managers I use or something like that. I really like to program my my own user interface to fit every need or every special need for each different project. Yeah? So every project is a bit different. So I can have a main widget where I start from, and then always put it the way I need it for my project. So what I did here, so I prepared it a little bit. I just added some custom script buttons here. And these buttons will, let me quickly put that a bit smaller here. These buttons will just jump to different queues, right? Oh, nothing in there yet. So how to do that? That's very easy. I want to influence a sequence and I want to go to a queue. There it comes up already. And it asks me about the sequence ID. That's actually sequence 1. I want to influence sequence 1, comma, and let's go for queue ID 7 because I copied it's a bit it's labeled wrongly, unfortunately. So be careful with copy and paste on that part. It's ID 7. So let's put it ID 7, and of course I forgot to label it nicely, queue 7 second speaker. Something like that. And now if I push that button, it jumps to that part of my show. So that's a very quick access and very individual for each project, doable and quickly as you can see, to directly jump to certain queues in your program. And then I add a timeline state buttons. So you can use pre-built buttons here. This is just a custom script button, so I created one of those buttons and then I just changed the appearance by using that reset button. And there we have a bunch of different looks for buttons available here. So we have a play button. This is the release state, the click state, and the hover state. Yeah, and you can add these little pictures to your buttons to make them look a bit nice. And the command there is sequence set state, sequence 1, play. So that's this button. This will be pause then and stop. Let's have a quick look at those ones. So this is sequence last queue, and this is just the sequence ID. Sequence 1, last queue. This will jump one, let's jump one forward before, so this is working backwards. And as we do not have pointing to the left arrows, I used a little tweak on that. So I did a CSS effect to these rotate and rotated it by 180 degrees to make it show that direction. That's just a tweak because we actually do not have a pointing to the left icon there, unfortunately. That's how I use that. And the background, that's just a shape with filling, so you can choose the color, line size, and things like that. Opacity, so this is a bit opaque. Can't see that really because it's a black background. And I use prevent selection, of course, that I don't have to fiddle around with that. Here I put just a label. I labeled it main sequence, so I know that part will affect the main sequence, and another label here which takes the time code of sequence ID 1 directly, so I can always see on what time code I actually am with this, right? Cool. Speak you through that later. Any questions so far?
No, that's all pretty clear, thank you.
Thank you, Nina. So what is really useful or most times is to have multiple sequences. We have not spoken about being able to push any live import at any time, and we also did not speak about output settings. So I really like to add 2 more sequences. which should be live pip and setup. Let's go for the setup sequence first. On the setup sequence, I really like to do whatever I have to do with camera and output settings. So if I have to use different offsets on the camera, if I have to use meshes or keystoning here, let's do some keys where it doesn't matter. So maybe I do it on the second output that you can still see something on the back there. So let's say the second output is affected with some keystoning and the camera too. But all these values, I really like to store them not on the main sequence, because when I do it on the main sequence, I have to drag the output and camera containers along all my shows, so that I have to extend them somewhere. I always have to care, did I lose them or not? What if I have to change something there? So I like the idea to put them on a separate sequence, and this also gives me the possibility to have different states. For example, first state is no soft edge. This the second queue will then be with soft edge settings or something. Let's put some soft edge in there. So at this state, I use some soft edge things store. So now I can always turn on and off the soft edge without affecting my main show. So I can show whatever I want on screen while trying out different settings on my soft edge. Yeah, that's one recommendation I can put out here. And the live pip thing, let's quickly copy the live input from here. Copy. Let's get rid of that one and put that here. Add some keys. Cues, sorry. Let's make it a bit more useful. A pause there, that also should be a pause. And at the end, maybe a jump, maybe not. Well, let's do it in a jump. You can do it a bit differently, depending on your needs. Jump to QID 1. So let's see. Whoop. In and out. Okay. So these are now programmed on the very top layer, and I give it a name, manual live pip, for example, and I also give it a color to make it really really visible that I use this layer for a very special thing. Please avoid using the same layer on multiple timelines. So this layer is now blocked for timeline 2, right? And output settings, those should only be on sequence 3 now. So never put a container now on the main show while having the setup in the third sequence, right? So the live pip is now on here, and now I have this second part of the widget here, where I can always at any state put in a live pip or put that one out. So if I'm back on my main show. Let's jump around there. So I'm on any state where I have nothing on screen, and the next queue will not bring up what I want to have there. So the live pip I can always bring in with that second sequence, right? And of course bring it out again. So that's another thing for using this sequence. All right. Any questions so far? Before we go on our
No, we're good.
last topic. Okay, last topic is back up a bit. Widget Designer is very capable to make use of backup systems. What you can do with Pandoras Box is to have, if you have a rack of, let's say, 7 compact players, 6 are in use, and the 7th one is to back up one of those clients. Therefore, you can create a backup button, and this looks like that. Let me change here to the site. So actually, this site is driven by this player with the IP 48. Let's say this one crashes now, and I want to replace it with my backup client, which has this IP address. So I can use this. I can either put that IP address directly in here, or I can use this script to automate this from the widget. So this command will set that IP address to a different player, and this player will then take the role of everything what's for this site here on the sequence. At the same time, of course, it uses different connections. I can put a matrix behind all these 7 players, and I can then route remotely the correct input to the correct output in one and the same button. So this button will not only change the IP address and the behavior of my backup device, it will also change the routing in the matrix to put the new player on the correct input for the matrix. Very useful. So that's the scenario to back up one client out of multiple ones. It has to be the same license though, so you can only change with the same type of license here, right? If this is started as something different, you cannot change that to a different IP address. So it has to be the same license, and then it works that way. In fact, if you run shows which are very important and you really want to make sure nothing will interfere any playback at any time, we recommend a full backup of the full system. So this will then be one manager, X number of clients, and the same as a backup. One manager with the same amount of clients. This can be run to synchronize the playback. You can use Widget Designer again. So if I hit that button here, or let's first jump to a queue, you can see that my backup device, so I have actually a backup manager running beside here, and this is on a different IP address, on the same domain though, because I want to show a different thing also. So it makes sense to put it on a different domain, make sure that they do not interfere and steal their clients, right? So this should be on a different domain. As I'm not having the full setup here, it's okay to use it for me now. And I put here in this label, I also can see the time code of sequence 1, but from the backup, right? So and if I push the play button here, you can see these two are running synchronous playback, right? So the command from the widget will be put out at the same timing. It's not a perfect sync, but mostly good enough for if you have an issue and you switch wherever. However you do this backup, then you can switch there, and it will have the same state at both timelines. So that's our recommendation when you want to make sure nothing will interfere with your playback. Last thing, not really recommended. You can run, as you know, a sub-manager in the multi-user mode. This makes sure, or you can use this feature also to have the show on your backup manager. And before you start the show, you can interrupt the multi-user session, and you have all the project files on your second manager and on the clients, and then you can run this system separate. What you also can do is you can leave the sub-manager running with your show, and in case your manager crashes, it can overtake the show, but you have to be a bit careful. It's not an instant it's not instantly done, right? So you will recognize it on screen if you do that way. So yeah, and that's, I think, all about backup so far. Are there any questions?
Yes, I do have a question, which is, okay, we have everything set up and Widget runs the main and the backup manager, and now the main manager crashes. What exactly do I do then? So, I mean, the backup manager does not have the clients at the moment. And somehow
stop. We don't have backup manager. So you are pointing at the direction. So you have one manager in the multi-user session running, right?
No. I was talking about the real backup. When you have one backup main manager and one as running in backup mode, the one you are addressing with the backup in Widget Designer.
The scenario I didn't point out, actually.
Well, you added the backup manager in Widget Designer.
Yes, I did that, but but the scenario was like, this is a complete separate system with its own client.
Okay.
So the only thing you do there is switch from the outputs from the main system. You switch the matrix or whatever you use there to the outputs from the full backup system. The scenario we had here with the backup, change mode to backup and things, this also still works, but it is more or less similar to the multi-user mode I just explained. What you have to do there then is on the backup manager to take over all sites and domains, and that's what takes a bit to make to get the clients back into the system and on the second or the sub manager or backup manager, whatever you are doing there.
Okay, that answers it. Thanks.
Welcome. Any more questions?
That's it so far.
All right. Then I think that's all I have to show for now. I hope you enjoyed. And we will see you next time. Feel free to put any feedbacks on the displayed addresses. Keep us informed if you have ideas for different themes or topics you want to hear. Yeah, and enjoy. Have a good time. Stay healthy.